A serial killer on the loose.
One of the most dangerous men I've ever come across.
He's a charismatic psychopath.
A man who murdered 13-year-old Millie Dowler and went on to kill again and again.
No young woman was safe on the streets of southwest London while he was free.
A city in fear.
People were terrified.
In fear of Levi Bellfield.
If you rearrange the letters in Levi's name, it spells evil, and that's exactly what he was.
Why did you do it? Did you kill her, Levi?
No comment.
In this programme, for the first time, the Metropolitan Police detective who led the interrogation.
I could see the cogs going round in his head thinking, how am I going to get out of that one?
And the police analyst who tracked down some of the most damning evidence.
I said to him, Governor, we have hit the jackpot.
You've got 610,000 possible vehicles, and that was distilled down to just one. It was a masterpiece.
Do you feel like you've been made a scapegoat?
Never heard before. Excerpts from a call in which the killer still protests his innocence.
It doesn't help me when the jury are told they can draw a conclusion from that and find me guilty with murder. It's disgusting.
This is the story of how the police nailed Levi Bellfield against the odds.
We were getting a bit desperate.
We didn't have a shred of forensic evidence.
And how his own errors led to his arrest and 2 whole life sentences.
If he hadn't made those mistakes, who knows how many other people may have lost their lives before we got him.
The Thames in southwest London, a part of the capital noted for prosperity, comfort, and above all, safety. But over a period of 2 years, the residents here lived in fear, because somewhere out there, a serial killer was prowling the streets. A serial killer attacking young, blonde women at random, without warning. Like here in Twickenham. Just a mile from the famous rugby stadium lies Twickenham Green. It's 10 o'clock at night, August the 19th, 2004. Customers are still wining and dining in the restaurants and bars that lie around its edge as the 267 bus travels across the south side. On board is a young woman, going home after a night out with friends. The bus goes past her stop. She's missed it. She gets off 3/4 of a mile later at the last stop. She starts to walk back. A dash cam in a police car spots her. It's the last time she'll be seen alive.
Sometime shortly after dusk, she stepped into the gloom of Twickenham Green.
Attacked by a hammer-like weapon, she died from serious head injuries.
The victim, a 22-year-old French student, Amélie Delagrange.
I led the police investigation into the murder of Amélie Delagrange, a young girl who's been brutally attacked, hit from behind out of the blue, blitz attack, probably with a hammer or similar heavy blunt instrument. And I realised from the location this is not the first. There have been others nearby. "18 months earlier, a 19-year-old woman was travelling on the 111 bus late at night. Someone was following her. After she got off here in Hampton, she was found dead, battered around the head. Her name was Marsha McDonnell.
Here on Priory Road, where this brutal attack happened, people have been coming throughout the day to lay flowers and pay tribute to Marsha McDonnell.
The attack on Marsha took place less than 3 miles from Twickenham Green, where Amélie was attacked. And so we quickly realised that we might have a serial killer here. You've got 2 young women, both blonde, both just got off a bus, both hit over the back of the head and left for dead.
Then the police discovered that there had been other attacks over the previous 18 months, where mercifully the victims had survived. In Strawberry Hill, near Harmondsworth, and just 150 yards from the spot on Twickenham Green where Amélie Delagrange would be murdered. Then another attack nearby, this time with a terrifying new weapon. May 2004, shortly before midnight, the H22 bus is travelling through Isleworth, West London. Among the passengers, an 18-year-old student who's been out with friends celebrating the end of her A-levels. She's being followed. When she gets off, she's deliberately hit by a white people carrier. Her name is Kate Sheedy.
Where does it hurt? It was there.
Although close to death, she's able to call an ambulance and tell a horrific story.
Yeah. Me again. He ran over me. He ran over you again? Yeah. He ran over you twice? Yeah. And it really hurt.
Miraculously, Kate Sheedy survived, but the attack on her was part of a growing pattern.
I was on the murder squad, and I also happened to know Kate Sheedy's family. I very quickly realised that it was very likely the same person was responsible for what had happened to Kate, was responsible for what had happened to Amélie. If you consider the time, the location, the fact that it was a young girl, blonde girl, in a seemingly random attack, I thought, yes, very different style of attack, but if you substitute a blunt instrument for the car, then everything else was the same.
This was almost a whole new level because you've got somebody who's prepared to kill by any means, and we needed to find this man quickly so he couldn't do it anymore.
The police soon had a prime suspect. His name, Levi Bellfield.
I'm the only journalist who has ever spoken to Levi Bellfield. Bellfield was from a traveller background. He was a doorman. He worked a lot of the clubs and bars of West London. He was a car clamper. He used his gift for the gab. It was incredible how much criminal activity he was involved in, and yet, where was the convictions? There were hardly any.
But that was about to change. 2 months after Amélie Delagrange was murdered, Bellfield was arrested.
At 8:30 this morning, police raided several homes in West Drayton. 36-year-old Levi Bellfield is currently being held at a West London police station.
After a long spell in custody, Bellfield was tried for the murders of Amélie and Marcia, and the attempted murder of Kate.
Passing the whole life sentence here at the Old Bailey, Mrs. Justice Rafferty said, "What dreadful feelings went through your head as you attacked and on 2 occasions snuffed out a young life is beyond understanding. But detectives believe that Levi Bellfield may be responsible for many more attacks."
And as Bellfield was led to jail, police were already investigating his possible links to one of the most baffling crimes of this century. Walton-on-Thames, Surrey, March 2002. A teenage girl gets off a train at the station. Minutes after these pictures are taken, she's abducted. Very soon, the whole country would know her name, Millie Dowler.
Millie, darling, if you are watching or listening to this, Mum, Dad, Gemma, Granny, and all the family want you to know that we all love you and we really miss you. And we can't wait to have you back home with us.
But family pleas like this were to no avail. Almost 6 months after Millie went missing, the search for her came to an abrupt end.
The human remains were found on Wednesday by a couple who'd been picking mushrooms.
I can now tell you that the search for Millie has changed from a missing person inquiry into a murder investigation.
Bellfield killed Millie before he attacked Amélie Delagrange, Marsha McDonnell, Kate Sheedy, and the other victims. But he abducted her just a few miles away from where he committed those crimes. In 2011, he was brought back here to the Old Bailey and convicted of Millie's murder as well.
The judge described Levi Bellfield as a cruel and callous killer who subjected Millie Dowler to a terrifying ordeal. He then sentenced him to a whole life term.
Bellfield was the first man in British legal history to be given 2 whole life terms at 2 separate trials. But if he hadn't made crucial errors, uncovered by remarkable detective work, the outcome of those trials could have been very different.
If he hadn't made those mistakes, it's entirely possible that Levi Bellfield would not have been convicted.
Next, we'll reveal the mistakes that meant Bellfield would be locked up for the rest of his life. The leafy streets of southwest London, one of the city's safest suburbs, but not in August 2004. Then, it was reeling from the murder of French student Amélie Delagrange, the latest in a series of savage attacks against young women.
Amelie's parents came to the Green to see for themselves the very public spot where their daughter's young life was brought to a brutal end.
Police immediately began to investigate whether Amelie's murder could be linked to several other attacks in the area.
Although the police believed one man might be responsible for all those attacks, they were a long way from catching him.
This was the first high-profile investigation like this I'd led. The pressure was on me from the community, from within the police, from the media. But the truth is that even weeks into the investigation, we still had no idea really who'd killed Amélie.
The investigation team didn't know it, but they were about to get a big break here, thanks to the murderer's first mistake. When Amélie's killer fled the scene, he stole her handbag. Inside were her keys, her purse, and crucially, her phone. Because he didn't turn the mobile off, it continued to send the phone network details of its location as he sped the 6 miles along here from Twickenham Green to Walton-on-Thames.
The mobile phone company told us that Amélie's phone was last visible on their network in the area of Walton-on-Thames. But they told us more. They told us that it had also not been turned off. It had either had the battery ripped off, or the battery had died, or, tellingly, it may have been thrown into water. I'm trying to put myself in the mind of the murderer. Where's he going to throw it? And the obvious place in Walton-on-Thames is off the bridge into the river.
Divers search the river today at Walton-on-Thames. Here, an object is bagged, ready for forensic examination.
And the police divers found what they were looking for. Items from Amélie's handbag.
This was our first real breakthrough, and also the murderer's first mistake. Because if he had left Amélie's handbag with her phone in it at the scene after he'd killed her, he's gone from Twickenham Green down to Walton-on-Thames. He couldn't have walked there. It had to have been a vehicle.
But finding which vehicle the murderer had driven along this route was a huge challenge.
We've got 2,500 hours of CCTV, and after a month of looking, we still haven't really got anywhere. And then we get our second big breakthrough.
The officer who made that breakthrough has never spoken before.
I was one of the detective constables examining the CCTV evidence. I came across images of a white van parked at the end of the run of parked cars, exactly at the point where Amélie crossed the road. They're exactly at the time that Amélie's on the green. Suddenly it's there and then it's gone very quickly. I've got something here. I've got something that might be of huge significance.
As I passed the door, DC Paul McGough leans out the window and said, Governor, I think there's something you might want to see.
It could be a witness, but then I suddenly realised that it could actually be the suspect itself.
Within a day, suspicion turned to certainty. Police found more images of the van, travelling from Twickenham Green to Walton Bridge, the exact spot where Amelie's bag had been dumped.
You feel this sort of chill down your neck, really. You kind of feel, that's him. I'm looking at the murderer's van. We need to find out who that was, because that's him. That's got to be him.
But that task was far from straightforward.
The images almost showed us an index number of the vehicle, but it just didn't provide us with enough to be able to properly identify it.
And because we couldn't find that vehicle, we couldn't find who was driving it.
And they might have never discovered the murderer's name if it hadn't been for his second mistake.
Investigators today were going door to door. The drains were checked, the green scoured for clues.
Still, the police need witnesses to come forward.
Amelie's murder made headlines nationwide. And here, the local community were answering the police's appeal for information in their droves.
It was my job to assess and evaluate all the information when it first came into the incident room. I received a phone call from a woman police officer who, early on in the investigation, had taken a statement from a lady who had felt that her former boyfriend might be responsible for this murder. We hadn't had a chance to follow that information up. I looked at his background. He was a car clamper, and a particularly unpleasant one. There was a lot of violence involved, a lot of threats involved, and that person's name was Levi Bellfield.
I'm the ex-girlfriend of Levi Bellfield, who reported him to the police. I don't know how I knew, but in my gut, I knew it was Levi. If you look at a map, Amelie Delagrange was walking distance to my house. Kate Sheedy was within vicinity of his uncle and aunt's house, and Marshall MacDonald was by his mum's house. So everywhere someone was attacked or, murdered, he knew the area inside out.
Joe Collings told police a chilling tale of life with a Jekyll and Hyde figure.
I lived with Levi for just over 3 years, and he really was the nicest, kindest person you could ever meet. On good days, he bought you presents, treated you like a princess, always, taking you out for meals, buying you flowers. He was a really nice guy.
Then there were the bad days, when Bellfield's thirst for violence took over.
The beatings became really frequent and more violent. The rapes then became really intense with him on a very regular basis.
Then Bellfield's partner made a sinister discovery at the home she shared with him.
I came across a black bin liner that had kind of a Vogue cosmopolitan kind of fashion magazine. And when I looked through it, all the blonde models and pictures had all had their faces slashed or stabbed. And also in the bag was a balaclava, a knife. I called it his rape kit.
So when an attacker began targeting blonde victims nearby, Jo Collings took her concerns to the police.
The girlfriends, wives, partners of criminals know lots of things that could be very damaging to them, but they don't tend to tell the police about them because, by and large, they're treated well by their other half. You had no doubt at all that she was telling the truth, and no doubt at all that she was talking about an extremely dangerous man.
As they always say, you should always trust your gut instincts. I did, and I was right.
Bellfield's partner had given the police a picture of a violent man capable of carrying out brutal attacks and who had prepared for them. But she had another piece of information that made detectives sit up and take notice. Bellfield drove a white van. The net was closing on Levi Bellfield, and another of his mistakes was about to shut it tighter.
This was an absolute game-changing piece of information. At that point, I was 99% confident we had the right men.
Southwest London, autumn 2004. Police are investigating a series of brutal attacks on young women. From CCTV, they know that whoever killed a student here on Twickenham Green escaped in a white van. Then they receive a name. Levi Bellfield drove a white van in his job as a car clamper. He also had a history of violence.
We now have lots of information that make Levi Bellfield appear very interesting and capable of being our man, but we had no conclusive evidence that he was involved in any of the attacks.
Despite his violent character, Bellfield had been careful to avoid problems with the police. But now his background was coming under closer scrutiny, and another of his mistakes was about to emerge. When launching his attacks, Bellfield used different vehicles. He believed it was a clever ruse to prevent police from linking the various crimes. But it wasn't clever enough.
What he failed to appreciate was that although these vehicles were very common, things like damage and missing parts on these vehicles were unique features which were sufficient to enable us to identify the vehicle on CCTV, even if we couldn't see who was driving.
Police first turned their attention to the white van driven by the murderer of Amélie Delagrange. CCTV images revealed the van was a Ford Courier, with back windows concealed with white paint, and silver plates fitted on the bottom of the back doors. Detectives then discovered this local car dealer had recently sold a Ford Courier.
We spoke to the car dealership. The car dealer explained to us that he had seen the vehicle since and that vehicle had had changes made to it that included metal plates on the back door, the windows on the back doors being replaced with white panels, a direct match for the van seen on the CCTV at Twickenham Green. They also explained that they had sold the vehicle to Levi Bellfield. From that point on, he was ours.
Armed with a registration number, the police tracked down this photo of Bellfield. He was driving the van in a bus lane near Twickenham Green, and only 2 days before Amélie Delagrange was killed there. It was a clear connection to one of the attacks. Now detectives set out to link Bellfield to another.
Marsha MacDonald from Hampton in southwest London was attacked with a blunt instrument as she returned from a night out with friends.
Whoever killed Marsha MacDonald did so after trailing her by car as she travelled on the late-night bus home. Thanks to the bus's own CCTV, officers could almost make out the car's number plate, but not quite.
It was tantalisingly close. What we had to do was take that to video analysis experts, and they came up with their opinion as to which digits were showing on the number plate. And when we looked at that, that gave us a choice of 610,000 vehicles that number plate could have been on. Our task then was to filter down, reduce that number until we got left with one vehicle.
From CCTV images, detectives identified the car as a silver Vauxhall Corsa, made before 2003, with 5 doors but no sunroof. Details like those reduced the 610,000 potential vehicles to just 178.
My team had to speak to the owners of those vehicles and establish where they were on that night until they could prove that the only Vauxhall Corsa that could have been on that CCTV belonged to Levi Bellfield. This was one of the most extraordinary pieces of detective work I ever encountered. That was essentially the only piece of evidence that we had that he'd killed Marsha MacDonald.
Now firmly in the frame for 2 murders, Bellfield was about to be linked to a 3rd attack.
Kate Sheedy driven over and left for dead as she returned home after a night out.
When Kate Sheedy got off her late-night bus, she was run over twice and left for dead. But she was still able to remember crucial features of the vehicle driven by her attacker.
Kate, despite the fact she suffered horrific injuries and was lucky to survive, the information she was able to give us was quite remarkable in the circumstances.
She told detectives the vehicle that hit her was a white people carrier with black tinted windows and a broken wind mirror. But could the police link that vehicle to Bellfield?
I was an intelligence researcher for the murder squad. As I went through Bellfield's criminal intelligence file, there was a police report saying that he'd been stopped by police driving a people carrier. It had the black tinted windows and it also had the broken wing mirror. This was an absolute game-changing piece of information.
There was one thing that was missing from the police officer's report, and that was the colour, because Kate Sheedy had said that it was a white vehicle that run her over. So I asked Tracy to go back to the police national computer, do a check on the registration number and tell me the colour of this vehicle.
The suspect was in custody. He was denying everything, and his claims of innocence were supported by those closest to him.
The family motto was that God is good, but the devil ain't so bad. That is kind of how they viewed Bellfield. They viewed Bellfield as a naughty boy. He was kind of up to no good. He dealt drugs, he clamped cars, he assaulted women. Yes, that's one thing. But did he murder anybody? Did he rape anybody? Absolutely not.
Whatever he'd told his family, Bellfield now had to talk to the police. And it was during his interviews that he made his next mistake. Bellfield's response to this questioning differed depending on which crime he was asked about. The detective who led this interrogation has never talked publicly before.
As well as the 2 murders and the attempted murder of Kate, we also wanted to talk to him about a number of other assaults on women in the locality.
One such attack took place at this bus stop when Bellfield was seen beating a woman over the head. He tried to talk his way out of it by blaming an associate travelling in his car.
All of a sudden he started pulling out a handbag. I thought he was mad.
His tactic was just to blame someone else. It's the way Bellfield operates.
He must have run about 80 yards, 100 yards, and he was out of breath.
In that instance, Bellfield couldn't talk enough, and he was just...
I was screaming at him.
Because he had the knack and he had the gift of how to do it.
It's my car, it's registered to my address, so what the fuck are you doing?
So, you know, if he had done something, he could get out of it.
I just couldn't believe it, I was in disbelief.
But when officers asked Bellfield about the 2 murders and the attempted murder, there was a marked change in his behaviour.
What chance did she have?
No comment.
No chance at all. That gun over her, not once, twice. Leaving her for dead.
No comment.
18 years old.
No comment.
He just refused to engage in any way, and in fact, at one point, he turned his back on me in the interview room. Just turned his seat 180 degrees and put his back to me. I could see Bellfield analysing what I was putting to him. I could see the cogs going round in his head thinking, how am I going to get out of that one?
Too many similarities, Levi. Too many similarities for the question not to be asked and for you not to say why.
No comment.
No comment. Because you can't say anything, can you?
I had the 3 pictures I put on front of him on the interview table of Amelie, Kate and Marsha. He just looked at me and turned the pictures over like that, put them face down. So I went back that night to the police station and I double-sided copied them. And I did the same thing the following day when we interviewed him. And I put them down in front of him, and he just looked at me, smirked the way he does, turned them over again, and sort of taken aback when the three girls were still staring at him.
Why did you do it? Did you kill her, Levi?
For Bellfield, staying silent was one error too many.
It was a mistake because when he tried to come up with answers, when he was given evidence in court, the question was asked, why didn't you say that back at the time, which is what I put to him in interview. For goodness sake, if you haven't done this, tell me.
Levi Bellfield was brought to court today to hear the details of the string of violent crimes he's alleged to have committed.
Bellfield's Old Bailey trial took place in October 2007, 3 years after the last of the murders with which he was charged. Because of his mistakes, the police had built a formidable case against him. But with no forensic evidence at all, the jury were out for an agonizing 2 weeks.
Which was terribly stressful. The stakes are so high. The tension was palpable.
Then the jury returned their verdicts.
A whole life sentence. Levi Bellfield will spend the rest of his life behind bars. He's been given a whole life sentence at the Old Bailey for murdering 2 young students and the attempted murder of a third, all in southwest London.
We were just speechless with the emotion of the elation that we felt that we'd succeeded.
It's that pride, it's that moment of all of that work and that effort's paid off, and the family have got justice.
As the police celebrated, Bellfield continued trying to convince others of his innocence from his jail cell.
Can I just run through a few facts you got from all of it, yeah?
He was very friendly, he was very chatty. He knew his case inside out of what he'd been convicted of.
In extracts never heard in public before from this phone call, Bellfield portrayed himself as a victim.
It doesn't help me when the jury are told that they can draw a conclusion from that, find me guilty with murder. It's disgusting.
The most hideous crimes imaginable, he still doesn't accept what he's done.
You can't hold me responsible because I'm innocent.
He still says, I am innocent. He is selfish, he's narcissistic. It is all about him.
There's no phone records to put me in the area. There's nothing at all. And, you know, I'm just basically convicted on because they say I had access to a white car that night. Right. When I didn't. And that's my conviction. That's life for that.
But even as Bellfield protested at his treatment by police, detectives were investigating his links to yet another murder. A murder for which he'd soon stand trial as a result of another damning mistake.
It was the final piece of the jigsaw that enabled the Crown Prosecution Service to charge Bellfield with the murder of Millie.
In 2008, after terrorising the streets of southwest London for more than 2 years, Levi Bellfield is now in jail for life. But the investigation into his vicious attacks was far from over. Police knew he'd murdered 2 of his victims, but they suspected he'd killed a third, 13-year-old Millie Dowler. Walton-on-Thames Station, Surrey, March 21st, 2002. Just after 4 p.m, Millie left here and began walking along Station Avenue. A witness standing at this bus stop saw her walking past. Millie's walk home should then have taken her past Collingwood Place and across this intersection. But Millie Dowler was never seen alive again.
I led the Surrey Police investigation into Millie Dowler's murder. It involved hundreds of detectives, search officers, forensic officers. We arrested quite a number of suspects during the time, but we didn't have enough to charge any one individual. We were always being asked questions as to why we hadn't solved the case. So that added to the frustration, really, and the desperation of the team.
The investigation will go on.
But the Metropolitan Police detective, who'd just put Levi Bellfield in jail for the rest of his life for 2 murders, thought he knew who might have killed Millie.
I noticed that in 2002 he lived in a road called Collingwood Place in Walton-on-Thames. I saw that it was immediately opposite Walton-on-Thames railway station. And I knew that's where Millie Dowler had last been seen when she was abducted. And I thought, what are the chances of a man like this living so close being involved in it? Pretty high.
Colin Saturn rang a contact working here on Surrey Police's investigation into the Millie Dowler murder.
I told him what we knew, told him about the timing, told him about the location, and I remember his reply. He said, the hairs on my neck are standing up.
More evidence linking Bellfield to the murder then emerged from former girlfriends. Jo Collings lived with Bellfield for 3 years and could link him to Yateley Common in Hampshire, where Millie's body was dumped.
Levi denied ever going to Yateley or knowing the area, but I had 2 photographs of myself, Levi and my horse at the Yateley Horse Show, which was the other side of the dual carriageway to where Millie's body had been found.
Even more compelling was evidence from Bellfield's then-partner, Emma Mills. At the time of the murder, she shared a flat with him here at Collingwood Place in Walton, just off Station Avenue. Millie Dowler was last seen only a few yards along the road from here.
On the day Millie went missing, Emma and Bellfield weren't actually staying at Collingwood Place. They were house-sitting for a friend about 13 miles away. However, Emma remembers Bellfield going out on the day Millie went missing and coming back in a different set of clothes. And those clothes, she remembered, must have come from Collingwood Place, so she knew that he'd been back there that day.
And when Bellfield's partner returned to the flat, she noticed that the bed linen was missing.
She was asking Bellfield, where have the sheets gone? What happened to them? Where were you? And when she was asking him, his response to her was, what do you think I did, Millie? I think probably that Millie had been in that flat, which is why he had the need to dispose of those sheets.
Bellfield was interviewed by Surrey Police, who were running the Dowler murder inquiry.
Did you, Levi Bellfield, have anything to do with the kidnap and murder of Millie Dowler?
No comment.
What a camera doesn't pick up is how nervous he was in front of them, how he was sweating, how he was finding it clearly difficult.
The evidence against Bellfield was only circumstantial, but the police would soon have enough to charge him because of his final mistake. Further down Station Avenue from Bellfield's flat, and the place where Millie was last seen, was this CCTV camera. It was positioned on the side of a factory run by Bird's Eye Foods. Because it wasn't a traffic camera located in the street, Bellfield hadn't spotted it. But its coverage of the area on the day of the abduction proved crucial.
The Bird's Eye CCTV camera actually rotates, so at one point it's looking at Station Avenue and then it spins to the back of the Bird's Eye building. So if you're walking normally along Station Avenue, it should pick you up 3 times before you get to the end. Now, Millie Dowler wasn't picked up at all, so I was 100% sure that she'd been abducted very near to Bellfield's flat. That was the final piece of the jigsaw that enabled the Crown Prosecution Service to charge Bellfield with the murder of Millie.
The camera was to yield further vital evidence. 20 minutes after the last reported sighting of Millie, it captured this red Daewoo emerging from the intersection leading to Bellfield's flat.
At that time, Levi Bellfield's partner, Emma Mills, had a red Daewoo, and she said that on that day, Levi had the keys.
And finally, evidence from Bellfield's own lips in the phone call with journalist David Collins.
I think when I asked him about the red Daewoo car, I didn't expect him to answer, because to admit that he was driving it would be quite a thing.
Bellfield claimed that on the day Millie was snatched, he was busy transporting heavy floor tiles around the area as part of a DIY project.
If you look on the imagery of that vehicle pulling out, it's very low to the ground. It's practically on the floor, isn't it? Because it's loaded up with tiles, which I was buying in Shepperton at the time, sold a kitchen.
So you think it was your car, but basically it was full of stuff?
I'm not going to comment on whether it was or it wasn't, It doesn't take a lot to work out, does it? Pulling out of a road where you live. And there's not many red Daewoo's floating around in Walton-on-Thames, is there? So we've got to be realistic about it.
He knows what to say, he knows what not to say, and he caveated his response by saying, I can't tell you this, but what I will say is, yes, it was my car, I was driving it, the car was full of building materials at the time.
I've got to be careful how I answer these questions.
Sure, no.
I knew that it had to be him.
It was one thing to be told that Levi Bellfield had the keys, but it was certainly on another level to know that Levi Bellfield had actually admitted to driving that car on that day.
Arriving at the Old Bailey this morning, the van carrying the man believed to have killed Millie Dowler.
I gave evidence, and I always remember looking up and looking straight at him, and you usually think, for that split second, you're back in that scared rabbit in headlights moment, and then I thought, actually, no, I'm not, because I'm here, I'm proud I'm here, and I will stop you.
Finally, the moment Millie's family had waited years for, the jury's verdict.
I put my head down and I waited, and I heard the judge ask the foreman to stand. I almost held my breath because I really didn't know what was coming, and it was almost like time stood still for one moment, and then that word came, guilty.
The judge described Levi Bellfield as a cruel and callous killer who subjected Millie Dowler to a terrifying ordeal and robbed her of a promising life.
That word guilty meant everything to me and my team. Millie and that case had been part of our lives for 10 years. Many of my team had children the same age, had daughters the same age, so it became personal. And when it becomes personal, you're never going to give up.
Guilty of murdering Marsha McDonnell. Guilty of attempting to murder Kate Sheedy. Guilty of murdering Amélie Delagrange. And now guilty of murdering Millie Dowler. But what if Levi Bellfield hadn't made that series of crucial mistakes? What if he'd spotted the CCTV camera on the Bird's Eye building? If he hadn't stayed silent when he was interviewed about the murders? If he hadn't chosen vehicles with such distinguishing features? What if he hadn't taken a handbag belonging to one of his victims? And what if he hadn't turned the women in his life against him?
Bellfield's big mistake was that he had treated Jo Collins so appallingly badly during their relationship. She felt no loyalty to him whatsoever, and she had no qualms about coming along to the police and telling us what she knew.
It couldn't go on anymore. He had to be stopped.
Levi Bellfield is clever, but not as clever as he thinks he is, which is why he made mistakes. Mistakes that led him to be jailed for the rest of his life.
Thanks to his 2 whole life terms, Levi Bellfield will stay in jail till he dies. Today, a simple brass plaque dedicated to Amélie Delagrange